because we have this approach of having the Cyclum-owned Speakers Corner event, which is the format where our experts from the company are sharing their expertise, their knowledge, and their experience together with the community, because we believe in the community, and giving and sharing and exchanging knowledge and ideas is something in our DNA. And today we're going to be talking about the minimal approach, a minimal API approach in .NET together with Miroslava. But before that, I would mention a couple of things for all of us worth knowing. Today's event is going to be recorded, and it's already been recorded. We will upload the recording of the event on our YouTube channel, and you will be followed up with it with the communication after the event around Friday to make sure we have all ready. We will definitely share with all of you the slides and the GitHub repository, because we're going to have the event today in the format of the live coding together with Miroslava. And we will also share with you the links to the materials and to the sources Miroslava will be mentioning today. So feel free to be focusing on the talk itself. We will share the rest with you afterwards. And before that, I would like to share a couple of words about Cyclum and the company itself. And Cyclum is a global digital solutions provider company. We have been on the market for more than 20 years already. Our headquarters is in London, Great Britain, but we have more than 20 offices worldwide, and we have more than 4,000 professionals who are delivering extraordinary results in different kind of domains like fintech, like medicine and health, retail, iGaming, and many, many more. We have amazing clients who are trusting us to support their business. Among them, there are big companies and amazing leaders global, like TUI, like eToro, Metro Markets, Just Eat Takeaway. But also we have the companies who are very fastly growing and who are very promising in terms of their movement with different approaches in changing and redefining industries globally. And we're really happy and proud to be able to do this together with them. Today, we're going to be talking with Miroslava, and I would like to tell a few words about her and why would she be sharing this ideas and thoughts about the approach in .NET. So Miroslava has more than 7 years of experience in development, and she's specialized in system architecture, design patterns, and tools that elevate the code base. And this is something that she has been focusing throughout her development career. That's why she has the practical knowledge and understanding failures and successes, just like we all have. And that's why she will be sharing those with you today. It's not going to be only about theory, but it's going to be exclusively about the practice, and you will see it live how it's going to be working. Despite the fact that Miroslava is quite an active co-worker and our colleague, she's an active contributor to different workshops and events, and she's joining them specifically in Bratislava and in her country, but also in other locations where we're present as a company. Also, Miroslava has been a speaker at WOOC Days conference in Brno. So she's having an experience in the domain she's going to be talking about. And she had her do's and don'ts and her ups and downs in this, which is great. That's why she's going to be able to share those with you. At the end, we're going to share with you a bit of the updates also about us and our opportunities in different countries, but that's going to stay later. I'm not going to take any longer time, and we'll pass the word to Miroslava. Miroslava, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, so hi everyone again. I'm so excited that you joined this event, and Irina, thank you for introducing me. So yeah, today we will talk about a new way how to write web APIs since Microsoft introduced this minimal API with .NET 6. They did a lot of improvements with .NET 7, and they still do some improvements with .NET 8. This is thing what I'm interested to. And before I start, I would like to ask you guys, if you already tried minimal API, if you heard about it, please raise your hand. I will see it in the chat, and yeah, I will know like what is the mood in the audience regarding that. You can send also some emoticons if you like it or if you hate it. So let me know so I would know like how you feel about that. I saw also in chat that for some people it's like first time what they heard about minimal API, but I assume few of you already tried. So yeah, I can see a heart. So feels like there is somebody who really like it. So yeah, I think that we are on the same boat. I'm also asking because when I started digging into minimal API, I realized that it's really controversial. I bumped into a Reddit thread where somebody asked like, doesn't anybody like minimal API? And I was so surprised because of course some people really like it. They said that they like speed up they coding and they were like able to like create web API really fast without a lot of dependencies. But some people really argued like, hey, why we have new way how to create a web API? We already had some working solution. So they really argued regarding that. So let's have a look to history because, like everything is kind of improving. There is still progress and is also for web APIs. Just brief history, like in 2002, we got like first framework for writing a web APIs in C#. It supported just so based services. After a couple of years, web API improved, so it started supporting also REST protocols. After a couple of years, we got like MVC pattern, which was supported also for building web applications. After a couple of years, we got in Microsoft they designed a web API specifically for RESTful web APIs on the top of MVC framework. And in 2016, we got finally cross-platform way how to write web APIs with ASP.NET Core. All of these ways how to write web APIs had something in common, and it was a controller. So when we built a web API, there were like always a specific class from which we inherit all features, etc. In 2021, with .NET 6, we got new way how to write web API, and it was a minimal API. The difference is that there is like no controller at all. I was wondering like if it's like something super new or is it like specific for .NET or C#. So I have asked like ChatGPT, like, hey, write me simple API in some programming language. So I just wanted to know like how other people or other programmers who are not working with C#, how they write web APIs. So I asked like, okay, write some simple API in .NET JS. In Node.js. So as we have a look in the code, it looks kind of straightforward, right? So we just specify HTTP method, we specify a route, and what we want to get on the response. So that's all. It looks clear. I have asked, for example, on F#. Again, the same thing. It looks like really straightforward. We have a path. So on this route, we are able to reach or execute some code. In this part, it's like we return some okay. It's assume it is 200 status quo. I assume with some information hello world. So it's really straightforward. With web API controller way, it looks something like that. So how I mentioned, we have a controller-based class, which contains some features and functionality which help us build web API. This is something what is like left from MVC pattern. So instead of presenting some data to view, we like returning some data to as a response to clients. If I am a newbie, I would be a little bit confused, like, hey, what's going on? Why are there a lot of some attributes? And I would be like a little bit confused, like how this web API works at all. So So this is like way, but if you are a like .NET developer who like work with web APIs every day, you like get used to it and understand like how it works. So what is the controller base? Let's have a look inside. Of course, it's a class that help us handle HTTP requests and returns HTTP responses. It contains some features which help us with building a web APIs. It is a binding, routing, validation, authorization. So what is that? What is behind that? So binding is like process to extract data from client request and pass it to server-side method. So we are using some attributes, like for example, like where we should like looking for data from client. It could be from body, query, form, header, etc. So controller base contains some features which help us specify, bind client request to some object in our code. Routing is like a way how to say controller like which endpoint should handle HTTP request. Routes, again, like control base contains some features which help us specify what is route in our code. So for example, if we call a get method, we use HTTP method get, and we use this route, this endpoint will be executed. So controller base help us routes, help us with routing. What is great? Controller base also contains validations. It's like dependencies already there. So we can decorating our model properties with some attributes, which says like, okay, this property needs to be required, or there is like mean or max value, etc. So validation is really handy, and it's something which comes with controller base. And last is authorization. So of course, it's good to protect our endpoints or controller, like that client needs to have a specific permission to perform a specific action. So this is something what is behind the controller base. If you are asking like, okay, like all this stuff seems valid, this is something what we need for web APIs. So why would we go with, for example, minimal API way? I think that it's that. On the left side, you can see a web API controller way, how to write web API. So we have a controller base with all this stuff around. On the right side, we have a minimal API way. So this is like program CS. We just build builder. If we specify one endpoint which do the same thing as that one, and we can run our app, and it's all. So it's really looks really clean. It's kind of easy to understand like what it's doing. So it's just returning some string. And it's really great, for example, if you are a newbie and wants to create or want to learn how to create a web API. This is, I think, like the faster way how to do it. Also, if you, for example, wants to execute if you want to create a proof of concept and you want to execute just some code, and you want a web API for that, you don't need to kind of spend the time and creating controller, etc. But you can just write one line of code and you have a trigger for your code. So this looks pretty nice. But this is a thing that a lot of people argue that, okay, minimal API looks clean, looks nice, it's small, but it's not a production level web API, because, you know, controller contain like all this functionality behind, which help us for building a production level web APIs. So let's have a look like what production level web API should contain. So of course, web API should handle requests and return responses, but there is a thing, we should make a security level about our web API. So we should restrict a client which can reach our API. So this is like one of the kind of main stages for production level web API. Next one is validation. So of course, like before our client reach our or send a request, we want to validate if this request has like fulfill all or necessary stuff. So we can throw some exception before our code inside endpoint is executed. Also, the important stuff is have some monitoring, which is connected with for logging. So this is like what production level API should fulfill. It's also API versioning, because if we have a bigger application, it happens that we need to support multiple versions. So API versioning is one of must-have for production level web API. Of course, it needs to be like well tested. Last not least, it should be also well documented. Document is open API or or generate some documentation. And to fulfill scalability and performance for web API, it's good to use async programming, dependency injection, caching, etc., etc. So I think that this is like mine kind of must-have things for production level web API. And today I would like to show you with live coding how to create a web API with minimal API approach, which fulfill all these production level needs. I have created a solution, minimal API, with project minimal API. It's in .NET 7. And I write just like what we want to achieve. So first thing is we want to create a second. Okay, so first thing what we want to do is create some CRUD endpoints with where we will use a minimal API approach. I will show you how to document it with OpenAPI. I will show you how to implement an error handling, validation. I will show you how to what to do if we want to support multiple versions. Of course, how to work with logging, authorization, and we cover our endpoints with unit tests. So let's start. I have a program CS. You can see there is like nothing. So we will start from scratch. We will create a minimal web API. Let's say that we want to just save customers. To save them somewhere, and when I want to show you like that it works, it would be great to have a database. So let me just create really quickly entities. I will create a customer entity. I would like to just say that I'm using a live templates to like speed up a process, because I want to show you a lot of stuff, and this is really helpful for me to make it faster. So don't be scared like from which from which place this code came. So it's from live templates. So I can create a customer entity. So basic one, just ID, first name, last name, and email address. Let's create a database, so some DB context. So can be in the president folder, and I can create a customer DB. Introduction. I will open again since somehow this stopped working. Okay. Maybe make it smaller, bigger. Looks like my studio a little bit stuck. Wait a second, I just close it and open again. Okay, now it works perfectly. Okay. Nice. So I have created a DB context with DB set of customer, which is with customer, which is like our entity. I will add it to our program CS. So yeah, so this is like basic stuff what I created. So we have a customer DB. I'm using like in-memory database just for make it like easier and not struggling with connection strings. So let's on our minimal API, minimal API way, how to write this API. So don't be scared that a lot of code was implemented. I will explain one by one. So with a minimal API approach, have I said we don't need a controller? What we are doing is we just build our application, and we are using a methods as is, for example, map post, map put, map get, map delete, which map HTTP request. So if there is like HTTP post request, it will fulfill this map post method. If this HTTP post request match a specific method and pattern, which is a route, so it's a path on which you can if it is like match this pattern, it will execute like this endpoint. Within a minimal API, so for just what we need to implement is this method, which have I mentioned, map this HTTP method pattern, which means like route. And in the handler, we can specify some dependencies or what we are expecting on client request. You can see that I have there a customer. This is a customer. It's like from entity which we created. This is something what binding it's smart enough and understand that this comes from body. We can write an attribute that it comes from body, but we don't need to do it. It's this attribute is the similar as is for MVC, but we don't need to do it because there is some logic behind which go through like some conditions. Like for example, if there is attribute from body or from route or from query, there is like multiple way how to use it. So you can use also from query, from body, from form, header, route, from services, etc. So if there is like any attribute before, it will of course grab data from client request from this specific place. But if there is like nothing specified, it also check like if this customer was it was added as a service somewhere in dependency injection. If not, it grab data from body. So we don't need to specify anything here. Since inside this kind of endpoint or handler, we want to save a customer, we need use a customer DB. If we need any dependency, we just write a comma and write a dependency right after. So I specify customer DB directly here. This binding is smart enough to understand that, okay, this is something what is not expecting from client request because dependency injection with dependency injection was specified already here. So it knows that it should use like existing service. So this is how we work with minimal API. Just specify method which follow HTTP requests. Just specify a pattern which is a route where on which this handler will be executed. And in the handler, we specifying if we expecting something from body, query, route, etc. And we specify our dependencies. If there is like any mismatch problem that, for example, if I forgot to add a DB context to dependency injection, what happened is that during the build, it will throw it will throw like exception like, hey, I don't know like where to find this customer DB. You need to help me somehow. So so it won't happen that it mismatch these dependencies. So if everything match, also this HTTP method route and also like all dependencies, the inside this handler, like this data will be saved to database. You can see that we are using async programming, so it's possible to use there. So we just save the data or do whatever what we want to do. On the response, you can like return whatever you want. I mean, like you can return some string, some JSON, but you can use also like this results, which has multiple statuses as created, not found, no content, okay, etc., etc. So this is something what you can return on response. There is like not nice thing if you want to kind of on the response, there is also like parameter like location, which says like, okay, on which route you can find, for example, customer ID if you want to update it or etc. You can specify it like basic this way. So you just add a parameter location on response. And of course, you can return like whole customer if was created. What I would like to just say, because this is basically that's it. So it's really easy to write endpoints with minimal API approach. What I would like to just say is you can use this from body, from query, etc. But if you use from query, it's supported just string. So if you have a string, it knows like to grab this information from query. But if you have an object, a complex object, it's necessary to use something what called as parameters. So it will kind of break this customer object as a parameters. So this is like a way how to send a complex object as a query. So it's just like something what is done like that, but I heard that they want to improve it, so we will see. Okay, so we have these endpoints. It's like just basic root endpoints. There is like nothing special. Maybe just for put, you can see that there is like a route. In the route, there is a parameter ID. So again, you don't need to specify any attributes like from which place where it should looking for the data, because it's know by itself, so it can bind it by itself. If there is any problem, you can always use these attributes. So this is a basic CRUD operation. So I can show you that it works. So I will use a Swagger. So I just add a I just register a Swagger generation, so it will generate a Swagger document for us. And also I need to add endpoints API Explorer. It's for a reason that with, for example, MVC, it was like added behind some others services, but with minimal API, we have a less dependency. So if we want to use a Swagger, we need to add also this endpoints API Explorer. So to display something, to have a Swagger UI, we have to use Swagger UI. I just add some basic data to make it nicer. So let's run it and have a look if it works. I will use a .NET Watch. It's because it supports hot reload, and I don't need to kind of, every time build and run. So this will do it for me. Okay, so yeah, this is our API. You can see that we have all endpoints here. So it works nice, we can execute and add a person or customer. That would be all if we want to do like some like basic application, but what I'm missing here is that you know, like our response, there is like not example like what we get on response. Also, if I would like to add some summary or description, it's not automatically created. So what we need to do is add open API how to say that, like fix it with open API. So yeah, so if we want to kind of decorate our endpoint with more data, we need to use something like this. So we need to say like, okay, on response, it produce a customer, like customer entity. And with open API, we can add some more parameters. For example, like it will have this summary, this description, etc. So this is like a way how to decorate our endpoint. This is like not like great, but it's something what I also heard that they are working on and they want to improve. So let's have a look if I add this information. You can see that our post endpoint customers or has some summary description, and also we specified like what we expecting of response. So it's like better documented now, and we need to do it like for every endpoint if we want to have a good documentation. So yeah. Since maybe it's not good practice to send entity as a client request, let's create a DTO. So I will create a directory DTOs, and I create a customer DTO. So it's the same, just I hide the ID because it's we don't need to ask client to send the ID since we can create it by ourselves. For that, since I want to have a customer DTO on client request, I need some mapping. The best way is, I think, using an automapper, since there is no logic between that. We just want to map one by one to classes or objects. So let's create a profiles, and let's create a customer profile. So what I did, I'm inheriting from automapper profile, and I'm just mapping customer to customer entity to customer DTO and back. I need to add that one to my builder. So I'm saying like, hey, let's go through this domain and like map my profiles. And if I want to use it on my endpoint, I can do it this way. I can do it like for all of them. So I will remove existing stuff. Up. So just one thing, what I did, everything is the same. What I did, I just changed like input parameter from customer entity to customer DTO. And since I needed a call a mapper, a new dependency, I just added here. So I just add a comma, and I specified dependency, which I used like inside the handler. So this is a way how to use like more and more dependencies. So you can see that now we are using a DTO. Also, we can see it in the schemas. So yeah, so now I'm satisfied. Let's have a look on our achievements. So we fulfill these achievements. And let's have a look on error handling. You can see that here we have, even though we have a first name, last name, email address, we can add even though it's empty, or email address is not a valid email address, what is not correct. So let's throw an error if we call this endpoint with invalid email address. So let's go back to our program CS, and we can do it. This way. We can just check like if email address contains @, and if not, we can throw an exception. This is a way how to do it, but maybe not great since we want to kind of maybe we'll have more exceptions. We want to reduce it. So let's do it like a little bit smarter. So let's create a folder exceptions. We can create our specific invalid email exception. And we just can inherit, like for exception, and we can like specify our exception. We will have a message email address is invalid. Instead of like this way, we can just code our invalid email exception, but it still would be good to handle it properly. So let's create a middleware. We can create a folder, something like middlewares, something like exception handling middleware. For error handling middleware. So what I did is just I define a middleware where during the every invoke, it tried to, like execute like some handler. But if there is any exception, we can like catch exception. If it's like our invalid email exception, it will generate like some nice response with like some error on the response. If it's like unhandled exception, it will like log some error and again generate exception response with some specific message. So this is like what we got on response. So let's use a middleware. We need to specify easily middleware here. It's like if it's the basically same as you would do with like normal controller. So nothing changed. So if I go back and I try to like send a request, you can see I got like some error with status code 400, like that request, and with some message email address is invalid. This error handling working fine. It's the same how I said, like as for controllers, just wanted to show you that with minimal APIs, there is no change. But like anyway, still I can write empty first name, last name, and it's something like what I don't want to, so it's something what should be covered by validations and not error handling, because I would just add, in that case, I would just add like more and more error and exceptions, what is not a good solution. So let's change it a little bit, and let's move to next achievement, which is a validation. So how to use a validation in controller? With controller, we already have a dependency for validation, but with minimal API, like there is like less dependency, so there is no dependency. So you need to use what you want. For example, I like a fluent validation, so let's use it for our use cases. So what I can do is create a something like validators, and I can create a customer validator. where I'm using effluent validation. So I'm just saying that for customer DTO, I want to specify some rules. So for first name, last name, it can't be empty. Otherwise, it should return some message. For email address, I'm using like method, which helped me find out like if email address is valid or not. And if not, we return like some message on response. We need to add that one again to our program CS. And how to use it. So let's use it for our map post endpoint. I have removed this error handling way. So we can do this this way. Hop. By step. So I have changed this endpoint. So what I'm doing, I just add a new dependency, eValidation customer DTO validator, and I'm calling like method to validate. If it's not valid, I will return a validation problem with message which I specify in my rules, and with bad request on response. So this is something what can work, but you know, like maybe it's not great to have it this way in the kind of body of the handler, because I would like to have there just logic which work with this with data which came from client, and not do a validation here. So what I can do is something what is called a endpoint filter, which is kind of connected with minimal API, and which was added with .NET 7. So I will explain what is that. So take like this. Okay. So for your endpoint, you can add something what called add endpoint filter. It takes something what called endpoint filter invocation context. So it get all these dependencies which you have here. And if you want to do, for example, some validations before your endpoint is executed, you can do it here. So everything what happened before this line of code, it happened like before body of this endpoint is executed. So it's great for validations. I can show you that how to get, how to validate. So it's like the same code is also here, but we need to get these dependencies. So we can get from this context, we can get a dependency, which is validator customer DTO, which is here. So it's on the position number 3. And we can get also like customer DTO, which is on the index 0. So once we get all these two kind of dependencies, we can do a validation and return again validation problem if it's not fulfill like all rules. But what I don't like with this way is that you can by mistake remove this dependency, and you never know. It will build correctly, but once you call this endpoint, it will throw like exception, like it will throw an exception that this is not valid because it can't find the index number 3. So, and also if we want to use it for multiple endpoints, for example, this put request where we want to just modify customer, we need to add the same code again, what is not super great. So let me show you a different way how to do it. Okay, so we can create something what call endpoint filter factory. I will create a directory which calls filters. It can be called endpoint filter factory. And I will explain what it's doing. This will run on startup as the input parameters. So we will call it from program CS. So what it go through like our endpoints, which we specify, and it will get a context. So it grab like all kind of all data which are in the handler, like all dependencies. It goes through validation descriptors and try to find if there is like any. For example, if go through create customer, it see that there is a customer DTO, so it knows that, hey, this is a profile, this is a validator for customer DTO. So it automatically add this endpoint filter to this endpoint. So yeah, if we map kind of this, if we map this kind of validation with concrete, like for example, this customer DTO, it will date this endpoint filter. So once we call this endpoint, it will run this validate method, and it validate if it's valid, and if not, it again return a validation problem. So so how to use that? We need to add endpoint filter factory for specific endpoint for which we want to use it. But since I mentioned that we have also, this put endpoint or other endpoints which would use a validations, we can use something what's called a map group. It is a feature in minimal API. So what we are saying, like we want to group some endpoints. So we just specify that we want to create a map group. We can specify a prefix if I'm not adding any prefix now, but if you have, for example, wants to have an API before, so if you use this way, it will just add in the route pattern this API for all endpoints. And we can specify that we want to use this endpoint filter factory, and to make it to add this dependency for all our endpoints, we just, instead of app, use this app group. So that means that all dependencies and all stuff which we specify for this group will be applied for all our endpoints. Good with map group is that we can, add a new group, and we can just adding new map groups if we want. So let's have a look if it works properly. I hope it will. Okay, so we can try our endpoint. We just remove some stuff. So yeah, we can see that it works. So we got some validation errors for first name, last name, and email address. And this is something what we wanted. So great. Even though we just implemented, some basic stuff, it looks like our program CS is a little bit bloated. There is a lot of code, and maybe it's not bad idea to a little bit clean it. So, and if you also want to use a versioning, it would add more endpoints, which would be a kind of hell in the program CS. So I will show you how to clean it a little bit. So we can create something like folder APIs. And let's create a class customer API, for example. Here, I can move like all our endpoints, but maybe it's good to make it a little bit smarter and not moving just whole code somewhere else. What we can do is create something like auto registration, where we can specify a interface, which will be called maybe something like IAPI route. This interface can have a method, a register, which will, as an input parameter, will have a web application. So we can call, use this register method in our customer API. So we can inherit from this IAPI route. So there we can register our endpoints, and we can add also something what help us register all endpoints which will use this interface. So let's add something like web application extension. So this is something what we can call from program CS. We can go through like all code and find some classes which use this interface. And if we found any, we can just create an instance of that. So for all our APIs, we just can add just this interface, and it will register all endpoints for us. So I need to call this register API route from program CS. Okay, so I will register them here. So I'm saying like every class which inherits from IAPI route will have a register method. So it will register all my endpoints. What I can do is just go to the program CS and copy paste, like all my endpoints here. Sorry, it's here. And okay, I will import the references, and instead of app, I can use this group. And this will works because like it register like all these endpoints, and it will works as before. But this is still not super nice, because if I'm not like super interested in the kind of logic what is inside the body of these endpoints, but I'm interested like what endpoints I have there and maybe make it more clean, what I can do is use something like this. So I will go back, and I can use something like this. So I don't need to have like everything also handler body like directly connected to these endpoints. I can call some methods. So I still have a HTTP post or BAP post method. I still have this route pattern, but instead of specifying like all dependencies and also like body directly, I can use a methods. So okay, I will add the references. So this is like same code, same logic, but I'm just calling that as a method. So it looks a little bit cleaner. So if you have a look, on this customer API, it's clear like what's going on and what's happening here. This is like just example for CRUD operations over a customer. If you want, you can just, since it's a minimal API, so you can build your API by yourself and how you feel it. So you can have just one file per endpoint. So it's really up to you how to do it. So yeah, this is a way how to make it a little bit cleaner. let's imagine that we want to have a version 2. So how to do it? So I can create a directory version 1 and maybe move there this customer API. Okay, I will fix the namespace. And I will create a version 2. It can have like the same endpoints, but show you that how to do a versioning. So I will fix a namespace. So with this way, we need to add a versioning to our program CS. Up. Versioning. So we said like add API versioning, and we need to enable API versioning binding. If we go back to our customer APIs, we can add something like this. So we can again create our map group, which says that this group will have a new version API. We can also specify with some name. We don't need to do it, but if we want, we can add. We can say like we want to have for this all endpoints, we want to use API version 1.0. And also I forgot to add when I created this customer API that we want to still use this endpoint filter factory. So we can add we can also specify these endpoint filter factories here. So I need to change to group version 1, and this will use a version 1. If I decide to use also this version 2, I can just copy paste and use something like version 2. And I can change like, okay, this should have a API version 2, and I will change all my endpoints here. So that's it. Since we are using a Swagger UI, it's good to also a little bit change it, because like here in Swagger UI, we are using a, just version 1. So since like our versioning changed, we should use a, yeah, we should a little bit improve. So we will go through this all API versions, through these descriptions. And in this drop down, we will display like not version 1, but you know, this 1.0 or 2.0, all versions. And we display a Swagger UI this way. Since we will have like 2 Swagger documents, and of course it's good to also add there some information, some description about this version, etc. And if we don't want to use it like again and repeat ourselves, we can use something what called like Swagger options. So we can create something what called something like Swagger option configurator. And I will explain what is that. So what we're doing is just we're going through like all API version descriptions, and we're creating a Swagger document for them. We are calling this method, which has some, you know, like basic information, like what this API is about. So we specify some description, title, what is a version, maybe contact license, etc., etc. So this is like nice way how to describe your Swagger document, and not necessary to specify it for every version, because this will be applied for both of these versions. To use this Swagger option, I need to go there. And add Swagger options. So I will just add as a service this configuration for Swagger options. So yeah, this should work. I hope. So we have 2 versions now. So we can see that it was refreshed by itself. So we have version 1, and we have here like some information regarding this feather, and we have also like version 2. So it's nice to have it the same. Also, when we call an endpoint, it's we have also like parameter which we need to fulfill, like which version we are using. So yeah, so this way we can fulfill also next kind of achievement or goal with versioning. Let's move to logging, which will be kind of easy to set up. So if I go back to my customer API, let's say that I want to log, for example, for this endpoint, want to log before some information before customer was created and after. So what I can do is just add an endpoint filter. So this endpoint filter like inherits from interface endpoint filter. And what we are saying like is on invoke what it should do like before this. This is like line which says like it should execute the code inside the endpoint. But we can say like before log some information, for example, customer going to be created. And we can do also some log information after our endpoint execute the code. So we can also log information customer created. To make it work, we need to specify it to some specific endpoint. So for example, here. Okay, so we are saying like add endpoint filter, and we want to specify that one. It's similar like we did edit a filter for validation, but different is that this one was like for all endpoints, but that one is like specific one for this endpoint. So so we can use it like this way with interface e endpoint filter. What we need to is add Serilog, where we are saying that, okay, we want to use a Serilog. Our configuration is that we want to write it to Serilog txt file and to console. So I can show you how it will works. I will just refresh for for sure that yeah, it was related correctly. So if I add API version, and let's make it as an email and executes, you can see that a Serilog file was created, and here you can see that we logged customer going to be created. We saved this information to in memory database, and we have also some post log like customer was created. So also logging is really easy with minimal API. Next part is an authorization. Since, yeah, of course, we want to kind of restrict clients which can reach our endpoints. So what we can do is, yeah, in program CS, add authorization and authentication. We can use a JWT or barrier token. I could just say like I prepared in app settings like issuer, audience, and key. So it's just set up here. And we also need to yeah, specify it here. So we are using authentication and authorization. So how to make our endpoints make them require authorization? It's really easy. In customer API, you can just, we already have a map group. So if we want to like restrict all endpoints to require authorization, we just simply can write require authorization, and that's it. This should make like all endpoints like protected, so you need an authorization to reach them. So if I go back, you can see like even though I want to write any request, it will return like 401 unauthorized error. If we want to like make it work, we need to add some endpoint which is not kind of restricted, and give us some barrier token. So in the APIs, basically what we can get, or what we can do is just create a authorization. This authorization again will inherit from API route. Yeah, okay, I have too many spaces. Okay, good. So again, we inherit from API route, we register our endpoint, and we call a method which do a job. In that case, we're using also a cache. So what we are doing is we're trying to get value from cache. If there is like nothing, we just create a token and save it back to cache. Otherwise, it return like a token from cache. So that's just like simple logic for that. This authorization kind of endpoint will be automatically added because it's using this interface API route, and it's registered by a web application extension. Maybe I can move it outside of that because it's not belongs here. I will fix yeah, it's good. Great. What I'm missing is that I need to add cache to services, add memory cache to make it work. So when I refresh, okay, we have this token here. So when we try, we can execute, and we got some barrier token on response, which we can after use for our endpoints. Since we are using a Swagger document, I'm missing something like authorization here, which will specify like, okay, there is a barrier token. So what I can do is go back to the Swagger operation configuration, and I just can use barrier setup. So I'm saying like, hey, configure some security schema. I will using a barrier token, JWT, and I add that one to my configuration. So if I refresh again, or I need to like restart my application. So now I can see this authorized kind of authorized button where I can write this token and it will work. So this way it's possible to use an authorization. Since okay, I can have a look achievements. So yeah, so we achieve also this point. So let's have a look how to test our API. This is like last thing what we need to do. So what I can do is create something like test base. Oh, it's already exist. It's somewhere here, not. So let's create like tests. Let's create a test base. In test base, there is like basic stuff. So I'm creating a web host, a web application factory from program. So I want to have all dependencies which is in program CS. I am creating like a host builder, and I'm specifying some services. I want to mock database. So I want to use like some mocked memory database. And I also want to mock this JWT token. I also have a method which called create customer client. So I basically just create a client and I add an authorization. So I can use this method to create a client and call specific endpoint. So let's create a test. Let's test just maybe our endpoint create customer. So when creates customer, I can use something like this. So in the test method, it should have valid response. So I'm calling from test base this create customer client, how I showed you before. And I'm just calling post async. I have this endpoint root with version, and this is like what I'm sending on in the client body. And I'm expecting this that HTTP status code should be created. So this is all. This is like a really simple test, but it should run properly since yeah, it just check if we got created. We have an exception. Let's have a look. Okay.
Avinash is giving you a tip that there's a typo in URL on line number 17.
Okay. Yes, thank you. It's like how I wanted to just change something. Thank you, guys. So now it should work properly. Yep. Maybe again, I don't know what I changed. I will build. Okay, let's go to unit tests and let's run again. It should be like correct URL. Okay, now it passed. Okay, great. So like this way, we can write a unit tests, which can cover all our endpoints. Maybe last thing what I would like to mention, since we went through all kind of stages, I would maybe make program CS a little bit smaller. So what I can do is create something like program extensions, where I can specify all, register all application services which I used in program CS. Instead of this all stuff, yeah, instead of Serilog, because it's used a host, I can just say like add program extensions. So I can remove all these unused directives here. So my program CS looks like this now. So what I have, I just register some application services. I'm using authorization, middlewares if we need, and like all APIs are registered through web application extensions class. So that's something what we can use if we want to clean up a little bit our code, our program CS, and not all stuff in one class. So yeah, I think that's it. So if there is like question, like if we can use minimal API in production, I think that yes, because we specified like some stages, like which production web API should meet, and it looks like we can do a validation, authorization. It support a versioning. Also, we can use binding, etc. So I mean, like it's I think like it fulfill also production needs. And what we get if we use minimal API, as a C# developers, I think it's something like maybe new for us, even though before there were also like Nancy framework, for example, which also help us build web APIs different way. But anyway, I think that it's great for C# developers who already work with controllers, that now they can like specify like necessary dependencies for endpoints. So we have as much dependencies as much endpoint need. For like newbies, I think that it's great because like we have so many options, so many backend languages, and if I would see like controller or control based way how to write web API, I wouldn't choose a C#. So minimal API, I think like finally align also with other programming languages, and you saw that this simple endpoint is really easily to implement. So what is the future outlook for minimal API? I just choose like a few things from .NET 8 preview. What I saw that they use an analyzer which can detect if you write, like not properly bindings. For example, in this example, we have to from body, what is not correct. So if you write something like that, it should like warn you like, hey, this is not correct, and you should fix that if you want to make it work. So this analyzer is not just for minimal API, it's also like for control-based web APIs, but it's, I think, maybe handy. And the next interesting thing is .NET 8, in .NET 8 preview, native AOT ahead of time away is together with minimal API. AOT like creates a self-contained app compiled to native code, so no more need of .NET runtime on our machines. It's kind of on the base of Microsoft test. They said that it's on the startup like I think 80% faster, and also like the app size is smaller, so it has some benefits. With minimal API, we need to use something what's called request delegate generator. So it turns these methods with which map HTTP request into request delegate with the roots during the compile time. So there is no runtime code generation. This request delegate generator you can enable when you create a project. There is a checkbox, like if you want to AOT publish, or you can do it manually. There is a in your project file, so there is a specific something like enable delegate generator for that. So you can so you can allow that also manually. This is like something what is in .NET 8 preview. But I saw a lot of discussions what improvements should a minimal API have. I think that they still progressing, and they still try to make it nicer and fulfill all needs, because in .NET 6 minimal API didn't have any endpoints filters, so it was really hard to create or build web API. But all these needs was fulfilled with .NET 7. So I think like with .NET 7, it's possible to create a web API also for production needs. So yeah, I think that this was all from me. If you are interested in code which I wrote today, this is a QR code for GitHub repo. And I think we can move. And if you have any questions, yeah, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, Miroslava. colleagues, here you can see the QR code where you can go and fill in, share your feedback about the talk today. We're going to be still covering Q&A right now, but just to remind you that it is very important for us and for Miroslava as a speaker, and for us to understand what you're interested about, what you liked, what you can suggest for us maybe to improve, if any. That would be just great. And now feel free to ask your questions in the chat. If you feel like unmuting yourselves, feel free to do so and asking them with your voice. But in the meantime, I suggest while you're thinking, maybe I will ask the questions that were there already in the chat. So, can we add custom or system annotations or attributes to endpoints, like validate anti-forgery token?
Mm-hmm. What I saw is that you can create custom, for example, custom bindings, so create custom attributes, for example, for binding. Because, for example, how I mentioned that this from query doesn't kind of parse like complex objects. So you need to use with .NET 7 something was called like S parameters. But there is also a way how to create your custom attribute for this. For example, if it's a binding, so you can use, for example, in .NET 6, there were no attribute as parameters, so you were able to create your custom kind of attribute for or custom way for binding. If you are asking like for like just attribute, for example, if you want to specify, like just want to validate some, for example, with Fluent validation, now how I implement it, it's going through all endpoints and check like all, like all, this client request kind of dependencies. You can also create your attribute for that. So before, for example, I tried like I created my own attribute which called, for example, validate, and just for these endpoints which I wanted, I add add attribute validate. So just these endpoints was validated or use a validation. So yeah, I think you can create like your own or your custom attributes if you want.
Thank you, Miroslava. We have a feedback from Vladislav. Hello, thanks for your session. Very good guide. I have a bit of tricky question. How to implement an API method that includes a request model, JSON passed in some form value, and iForm file simultaneously within a single multi-part form data request in minimal API, and reflect all arguments into Swagger without additional OpenAPI customization, custom open API operation filter. As I know, we cannot combine iForm file and model with default model iBinding. We can only implement custom model binding and iForm file as two arguments of the API method. But in that case, Swagger will not be able to include a model part to OpenAPI schema by default, and we need to customize it manually. Maybe you know a better and simpler way to work with iForm file and request payload in minimal API.
Yeah, this is a really tricky question. Honestly, I didn't work with this iForm file, so maybe I think that I have no right answer for that. Yeah, I mean, like this, also this, yeah, without this open API customization, I assume it will be really hard. Yeah, I have nothing extra to add for that. Yeah, since I haven't worked with that, so yeah. But yeah, if I have any maybe thoughts, maybe I can add it to this GitHub repo if I find something, but I have nothing now to add. So yeah, it's a really tricky.
Thank you, Miroslava. Thank you.
Sorry.
Guys, if you have thoughts on this, feel free to add on as well if you've worked with it and maybe you have some thoughts to share with the colleagues here, that we invite you to the dialogue here. In the meantime, we have a couple of questions actually from Andriy. Do you want me to read all of those or shall we move one by one?
Maybe okay, we can read all of them, so I will try to maybe sum up if there is any connection between them.
Sure. So question number 1. Do you use the use exception handler extension method in your projects to add a middleware to catch global errors? This is number one. Second, to what extent does fluent validation prevail in your projects over the usual validation attributes? And the last one, is I endpoint filter analogous to IA sync action filter? Can we use it as an attribute from a service?
So regarding this exception handler extension, if you mean like that one, I'm not sure if.
Andrei, feel free to jump in
Yeah,
and
just
maybe
like
specify.
yeah, maybe let's specify like if you mean how I use it in this code, because I mean like how I use it like for this demo. I'm usually using that in all of my projects. So this is like way how I get used to it. But of course, I believe that there's also like other ways how to do it. So yeah.
Does it help you add the middleware to catch global errors, this extension?
Yeah, that's yeah. I think yeah. It's a it's a way how I do it. So yeah, this is essentially what I'm using.
I think that's the answer actually to Andrei's question. Andrei, if you feel like you would like to have more specification here, feel free to write it or turn off the or unmute yourself and then ask it. To what extent does fluent validation prevail in your project over the usual validation attributes?
I mean, like I like the way how it's implemented, that we can, like sum up the rules in some folder, and it's I don't know, like in also my projects, I'm using just Fluent validation. Maybe it's like something what I get used to it, and all these rules make sense for me. So it's really nice like way how to describe or described all these rules for like client requests, so I can handle it like before like a real endpoint is executed. So maybe it's something what I get used to it, but yeah, this is since in minimal API you have no validation dependency, so you can choose like whatever you like. I choose this Fluent validation just because I'm using that in my projects. But of course, it's up to up to you guys what you prefer.
Thank you. And the last question from Andrei is endpoint filter analogous to IA sync action filter? Can we use it as an attribute from a service?
I'm thinking now. I think that this endpoint filter is so specific for this minimal API way. How to say that? Like this endpoint filters was created or developed just for minimal API. And it was because, with .NET 6, there were like need that they want to, that developers want to, for example, add a validation before, like some handler is executed. So they add this specifically for a minimal API. If we can use it as an attribute from a service, I'm not sure now, but yeah, it's a good question for yeah.
Thank you. We have a question from Maia. How connect Angular login form with the code in C#? I can't understand this.
How connect Angular login form? Okay, like if you mean like these templates which comes with not sure. I don't know if I understand this question. Like if it's like a template which you can use when you're developing a web API together with Angular. If yes, I haven't tried yet, so not sure. Yeah, not sure regarding that. I use minimal API just for simple web API, and usually front end is developed like it's a different modules, etc. So it's not connected in one project. So I think I can answer on that.
Thank you. Thank you a lot for that live coding session. That was very interesting, even for full newbie like me, mentioned Andrei. Thank you, Andrei, for your feedback. We have a question about so he does not understand how is it useful while we have the MVC. We have a full discussion here actually.
Okay.
Vladislav was mentioning that MVC is redundant. We don't need view-based structure of API. Yet distributed architecture. Let's wait. Guys were mentioning that we should wait for your presentation, and they were mentioning the web API. But I'm not sure if Serhi has received the answer to his question. Please let us know if you do.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think regarding that one, I know that a lot of people were like confused, like why we have, for example, minimal API since we have a controller base way. I think that yeah, it's just like something what is there like from MVC. So it's like something what it was not necessary, but since there is also already MVC pattern done, so they modified also for web API use cases, something like that. But anyway, like we don't need a controller. Of course, like you can use it if it's like something what you like and what you get used to it. But this minimal API way, I think like the biggest advantage is that you just use as much dependencies as this endpoint needs. Because usually with controller, you create a constructor where you specify like all dependencies. And even though this endpoint doesn't use this dependency, it's already specified here. Or for example, if we have a validation already done in controller base, maybe you are not using them. You are using, for example, Fluent validation, but you still have dependencies on them. So it's, I feel like just a way to make it less dependent web API. And I just wanted to show you that you can use it also like for production. But I saw that a lot of people are happy to use it like just also for if you have a really simple API and you don't need to all what is behind a controller base. So you can use it like if you have a like really big web API, but you know, like it's really up to you if you want to use it or not, because in Microsoft, they didn't say like they want to shut down the controller way. They still support like both ways. So I think it's just like new way how to do it.
Thank you. We had a comment from Dimitri. You just can call web API endpoints from Angular using RxJS.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was to support your answers here also. Umar has a question. Is there any way to define dependencies for customer APIs for APP group instead of mentioning them for each API separately?
I think that it's it would be possible to maybe do it like in this when we specify when we like looking for all these interfaces, and you know, like we call this a register method. So somewhere here I assume that it's possible to specify maybe some common dependencies. It's true that since I create like two versions, so both of them for both of them I add this require authorization, for example, or require validation also. So yeah, that's of course it should be possible to move it somewhere up. So it's a way how to register them. I would like to just mention that it's possible to use also what's called like Carter framework. It's something what can do also register all your endpoints by itself. And it's I tried some stuff with that, and it looks kind of easy to go. So if there is like some problems within you know, this way to register these dependencies just in one map group and use it for others, you can also try, for example, this Carter. So for me it was like really easy to specify all dependency, etc. So if it's not going this way, also there is a maybe this Carter, which I recommend, but it should be possible because it's good to reduce redundancy in the code.
Thank you. We have feedback from Kwaya. Umar, thanks. It was a great session. Learn the new concepts and some best practices. Thank you for the feedback. Please don't forget to leave the feedback via this QR code form. It is very important and it's really valuable for us. And we have the question from Serhi. Will minimal API replace web API in the future?
I think I answered on this question. Like I don't know exactly, but what I see, for example, in .NET 8 preview, they still support like both ways how to build web APIs. Also, this analyzer is not like specific on minimal API. I think like they will still support that, but nobody know which way they want to go, and if they want. I don't think like they would shut down this classic web API way soon. But I think it's good to try minimal API at least. So if something like that happened, you know how to write APIs. But what I saw that also in the previews they support like both ways. So I don't think so that it will be in .NET 8.
Thank you so much, Miroslava, and thank you guys for your questions and participating. The last thing we would like to leave you with will be that's going to be the last slide actually on our presentation, is about we do have openings in our company. We have a lot of great colleagues and experts, just like Miroslava is, with whom working is not only a pleasure, but also the knowledge and experience exchange. We have delivery centers and locations where we have engineers working on exciting projects in different countries, just like Ukraine, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Spain, Slovakia, Czech Republic, and we all encourage you to join us. And of course, India, Pakistan are there with us also. Please feel free to scan the QR code, check out if there's any opportunities that you might be interested in. Feel free to apply on those, and we would be really happy to see you amongst the climbers. And maybe one day you're going to be the one talking and sharing the talk here during the speakers corner. That would be just great. We have another final question from Dimitri, actually. Miroslava, let's give it the final answer. Did you encounter any problems with minimal API that were not present in the standard web API?
Yeah, in .NET 7 they fixed life in like all stuff, but almost all stuff, but still, like if a client wants on a response like XML schema instead of JSON, like there is like not content negotiation in minimal API as default, but you can add your own result to result extension and build it by yourself, so you can also fulfill these needs of clients, but it's not something what is there like as a default. And for me it's just one thing, like this is this documentation or Swagger generation, it would be nice if we don't need to specify every endpoint this way how I did it, but it would be great if can do it by itself. And also I'm using in my project usually contract first development, so I usually specify a Swagger file, and from this file I generate a controller. And that would be nice if something like that will work also with minimal API, so I can still have a contract as a first and generate from that this minimal API endpoints. So that is something what I would like to have, but we will see. It's still progressing, so maybe there will be a day once they implement it. But this is like something what is not from Microsoft, it's more from this open API initiative. So yeah. So this is maybe some stuff what I missed.
Thank you so much, Miroslava. Thank you all for joining, for dedicating your time and showing your interest to the event and to us. Stay tuned for more events happening on and being announced on our social media pages. I'll just like to remind you that I will share and we will follow up with you the video recording, the slides, the GitHub repository, and link to all the sources mentioned by Miroslava. It will be done by the end of this week, so stay tuned and check on your emails. And on this stage, we would like to thank you all once again and wish you a lovely afternoon on the rest of the day and the rest of the week. Thank you, Miroslava, for a lovely presentation and really helpful and very detailed one. And thank you all. Bye and see you soon.